I'm not sure if you heard that. We're just waiting for the tech people to tell us that we're good to go.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys didn't see Joel's message in the chat, all the tech stuff is good. We are ready to go.
Thank you, Sebastian and Joel.
Thank you, Sebastian and Joel.
Get it louder again. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. I just clicked it.
All right. It looks like we have everybody on. Phil, you look like you're on mute, but it looks like you're here. So, Leslie, can we go ahead and get a roll call? We'll call the meeting to order.
John Krischer.
Here.
Susan Murphy.
Here.
Bill Pardue.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here.
All here. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
Great, and thank you, and good morning, everybody. So taking the reins over from Phil feels a little bit weird, but we'll do the best we can. All right, so public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters that are not on the agenda, but I do not see anybody from the public here on Zoom. So we will move on to announcements from the trustees.
Just one, actually. We made over 19,000 on the book sale. Thank you to those, John, and everybody else that helped. We made in sales, donations, and memberships. That's what we made. So, and we've made over close to $7,000 at the market. So we'll be able to do a substantial contribution. We'll decide in October how much.
That's fantastic. It's nice to see you guys out at the farmers market too.
Yeah.
John, any announcements?
No.
Phil?
No, none of mine in. Thanks.
I would just say that I went to the kids program last Friday. I sat in the park and watched the circus folks, and they were quite fun, and the kids all seemed to be having a good time. So thanks to the library staff. I think Margie was, actually, I didn't see you there. I think Margie was doing it, but everyone seemed to be having a good time. Announcements from the library director.
We're getting closer to being fully staffed. So that's my big focus right now. And I'm looking forward to opening on Thursdays and Saturdays when we get there. And that's it.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, we have a number of things on our agenda for today. So we will start with Alex, receive a report from the Carmel Public Library Foundation on recent activities.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone. We are in the process of firming up our programs for 22 and 23. The first one will kick off September 21st. And we have best-selling author Jonathan Martin, who's a co-author of this new book called This Will Not Pass, Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future, in conversation with Betsy Fisher-Martin, who's an Emmy-winning journalist who used to be the executive producer of Meet the Press. So we're kicking off with that in September. Super excited about that. September 8th is our board retreat. And then September 29th, we have a Librarians Appreciation Breakfast at the Ocean View Room in Ilfreniya, which you'll all be receiving an invitation to. We're really excited about welcoming the new librarians and just showing our appreciation, especially as we haven't been able to do that in person over the last few years. We're working on a communications update or refresh for the library and the foundation. So I'm in the process of sussing out agencies, and once I drill down a little bit further, we'll work together with Ashley and come up with a nice new kind of integrated plan for our communications to raise our visibility and fundraise. And then also just with capital projects, we're still working out information for the connectivity project, and we're working with the city, obviously through the library with other capital projects. And that's it so far. It's been a busy summer, and we're welcoming 3 new board members who we're really excited about. Pretty diverse. Bob Kramer, who's a strategic consultant, and Diane Danvers-Simmons, who's an author and former advertising executive from New York, and Sarah McCary, who has had a lot of really great experience with annual fundraisers and campaigns and that type of thing through educational institutions. So we're super excited about our new members. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Any questions for Alex? John, any questions for Alex?
No, that's not this time. No.
Susan, any questions? Phil?
Nope, no questions from me. Thanks.
So Alex, my only question is, are we going to be working with the school board again this year? I know we kind of
Yes, that is, I have most of our programs through Sunset Center firmed up those dates and programs, but because, school is just getting going August 8th, they haven't gotten back to me yet, but we have talked about a few good ideas. And Jessica Hall, who actually you and me have worked with already, is terrific. She's great, communications director.
She's their relatively new communications person.
She's very enthusiastic about our partnership. And so, yes, we have probably about 2 programs that we're looking to hopefully do. And then along with community night with the library programs, fireside chats, and a film this year. So it's going to be a good schedule. And I also just wanted to congratulate Friends of the Library, Suzanne. That's fantastic. I know Hudson said that it was a great book sale again, and those numbers are wonderful. So good job. Congratulations to all of you.
Great, thank you. And of course, we appreciate the foundation support as well. All right, next item on the agenda is to receive the fiscal year 2021 audit report and a presentation from Auditor Sheldon Siobhan. Is that how you pronounce your last name, Siobhan?
That's correct.
All right.
Good job.
From Siobhan and Associates. And so Sheldon, you are on, so I will give you the floor.
You guys would be surprised how often people will try to say Sheldon, Siobhan back to back. It doesn't work. I get named after my grandpa. His name was Sheldon Beaton, though, so it was easier for him. All right, so June 30, 2021 audit report, and welcome to the COVID environment. It seems that every year our goal is to get the report done and issued earlier, but with COVID, everything is just stalled and later. Hopefully this year, though, we'll get everything back on track and get these reports out. Yeah, somewhere around January, which is more common, especially for the smaller entities. The larger entities, we try to get them done by 12/31 or prior. And so looking at this audit for June 30, 2021, essentially it's, I'll just get right to the results, and it's an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean audit opinion with no material adjustments and no significant deficiencies noted. And keep in mind, we actually performed this audit under the generally accepted auditing standards and generally accepted governmental auditing standards. And of course, the uniqueness of the HML fund is that it's included in the city's audit as well. And so we're able to really rely on some of the work we do there to help tie everything together. But we treat it in essence as a separate audit in the scope of things that we do for the city and the library fund. It's a special revenue fund for the city. It stands alone almost like a nonprofit in these financials. However, we are presenting these financials, and we always have, and it's always been done this way, like we would any other governmental entity. So you see those, the presentation includes financial statements such as a balance sheet, a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And then there's no cash flow statement like you might see with a nonprofit, right? So I wanted to touch on those things because I don't think I have in the past. I think it's important to note how that presentation is formed and where it comes from, and it follows governmental accounting standards, right? Not Financial Accounting Standards Board, not ASC accounting statement codification, but governmental accounting standards. So with that being said, as of June 30, 2021, the overall fund balance for the fund was $1.47 million. And of that fund balance, you had about $250,000 that was restricted, and then $275,000 committed, and then an unassigned fund balance of $945,000. So I'm throwing some numbers out there. In essence, my point is that we look at this as a healthy entity. We don't see that there is a lack of a going concern. And so from an audit standpoint, when we do our risk assessment, we're required to take a look at the entity's assessment of going concern or lack thereof. And we did that, and we didn't find that there was a lack of going concern. The risks that we identified in this audit have to do with the significant accounts, cash and investments. So obviously cash and investments include, it's all your assets, almost 1.5 million at June 30, 2021. Very little liabilities, just accounts payable, so it wasn't a significant risk. However, when we see that, we identify a risk of unrecorded liabilities. So we test transactions subsequent to year end, and we had plenty of months to look at to see if anything wasn't recorded as a liability as of June 30 that was paid for subsequent to June 30, and therefore could possibly have been a liability. So there's that cutoff that we're looking at. So keep in mind, we're reporting at a specific date for a specific period. So that was another risk that we identified in the audit. And then, of course, testing revenues. It's something that we always need to do. So we look at the general ledger detail, and then we identify significant accounts. Now, your revenue is $320,000. When you're looking at materiality for an audit, materiality includes significance, it includes auditor's judgment, and then we follow standards in determining what a materiality number would be. And for HML June 30, 2021, the planning materiality was actually $75,000. So when you're looking at $320,000, that's not a very large number considering a $1.47 million total assets, right? However, we still tested those accounts to verify accuracy. And then also the expenditures. And of course, documents and records, program and cataloging, and then the details behind that we tested to ensure accuracy. So in essence, as I said from the very beginning, those are the higher risk areas that we looked at. And with the procedures that we performed, we had an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. So with that, I'll leave it open to any questions that you might have.
So does anybody have questions? I will start. So John, just so you know, the way it's organized on my screen, John, you're just up in the upper left. So that's why you get called on first. It's not because I'm picking on you. It's just because that's where you are on my screen. So John, do you have any questions for Sheldon?
I'm just trying to get to grips with it right now. I've been reading it over, and the risk he's talking about, what risk do we have? That was my curiosity on this, on unseen risk.
Yeah, unseen risk if you think about it, biggest risk that you might have is fraud, misappropriation of assets, right? But that's actually pretty minimal for you guys. Even if you had fraud, the biggest concern there would be the fact that it occurred, but it wouldn't be significant or material. So that would probably be the one main concern you would have as an entity of any organization. And then secondly, it's about reporting, financial statement fraud. Are we making things look better than they should? Are we not reporting liabilities that we should be reporting? And based on the procedures we performed, and mind you, it's not 100% confidence, it's a 90% level of confidence that we perform at. And it includes sampling, but we didn't see anything that would make us believe that these financial statements are materially misleading.
Well, thank you very much. I understand a little bit better. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm being very technical.
John, any other questions?
No, that's
just getting your head wrapped around it.
Yeah, that, and I have a few questions on the amount of interest and all we get back off our investment, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to get out of LAIF to get more interest. There's a non-technical answer, but then you have more risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, do you have any questions for Sheldon?
No.
Phil?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, Sheldon, I have one question. So on our balance sheet,
what's that?
It shows about $250,000 in restricted funds.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the last item is other restrictions, $103,000. On
I answered that question incorrectly in my email.
I didn't see your email, but you can tell me, could you talk? So the question is, on page 11, what we see is restricted assets of $146,000. It feels like there's an extra $100,000 in that calculation. So tell us kind of what the story is.
So the two numbers there's 175,000 included in the restricted operating reserve in the trial balance, the original trial balance. So that's the difference there. So you've got the Bradney Book Fund.
Yeah.
And then you've got the 100,000 for the Evans Trust Fund.
Yes.
And then you've got the broadband equipment grant.
Right. That's $3,000.
Right. So of those right there, you've got 151,270, and then another 100,000 is included in the late restricted account for the operating reserve. However, it could be that that's actually a committed balance. Actually, I'm sorry, that's 175,127. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a deeper look at that.
So what I'm looking at is, so I see, so when I look at this balance sheet, so I see, I'm just kind of going, and I'm on page 4 of the audit report.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the operating reserve at 175. I see the equipment replacement. Those are committed funds, not restricted.
Mm-hmm.
That's consistent. It's just that this other restrictions, I think, at least when I go back and look at some of our older stuff, it looks to me, I'm not sure where the extra $100,000 comes from in terms of restricted. I think the total number is right. It matches everything. So it's just a question of whether it's restricted or whether it should be in the unrestricted category.
I think actually we could have a classification problem there. I think the other restriction should only be the 3380. So
okay. So is that something you can take a look at, and then obviously if we need to amend it, it can just be amended, and just mostly because restricted funds are restricted for us, and so we have a limit, and I don't want it to be kind of somehow us tying up more funds than we need to, essentially.
Absolutely. So the one question, the report that's been shared with everybody, does it still have the draft stamp on it?
Mm-mm. No,
it has the final. Doesn't matter. Just curious to see if it did or not. Making sure that we did send you the final report, not a draft version. So I'll take a look at that and I'll check in with my team, see what happened there. But my guess is that the $100,000 got picked up twice for Evans.
That's. I mean, I don't know where it got picked up twice, but I think that's possible as well.
Yeah. All that happens there, it's a total fund balance is the same, doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
So it just takes 100,000 out of the other restrictions and adds it back to your unassigned. So that gives you, it frees up, it shows you the true picture of what your freed up money is and your available money is as of June 30, 2020. So we'll get that corrected and send that out.
Okay, great. Well, somebody could just take a look at it. It could be that I'm just misreading it or not understanding where that.
Yeah, I think after this call, it took me about 5 minutes to realize that what I'm saying is accurate, because as we're going through this, it looks pretty obvious to me.
Okay,
yeah,
great. And so there's no vote that's required on this. It's just receive it, and so we may see this back on the agenda if there's a change, and we'll just note that there's a change. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. So Sheldon, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to stay with us for the rest of the meeting if you like, but
that's where the meetings I go.
We appreciate you coming this morning.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
All right. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes for May 25th and June 22nd regular meeting. These are in our agenda packet. Does anybody have any changes or comments to those? And if not, can I get a motion to approve them?
I move that we approve the minutes of the May and June meetings.
I'll second it.
All right, we've got Susan moving, and we've got 2 seconds. So Leslie, however you.
Alex, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think I saw in the minutes that the funds that were raised were 50,000, but that should be corrected to 150,000. And just Douglas Brinkley is, it said David Brinkley, it's Douglas Brinkley, if that matters at all, but I think the number matters in that.
Yeah, so this is on the May report.
I think so.
Alex, it's Order of Business, Carmel Public Library Foundation. Oh, it says David. Okay, so 2 changes there is what I'm hearing, Alex. I'm hearing that the annual fundraiser, which is the 4th bullet point, should be 150,000, and that it's Douglas Brinkley is the last bullet point.
Yes.
I might as well fix it. All right.
Do you need that motion amended then?
I do, if you don't mind. So I think what we need is an amended motion to approve with the changes that Alex just recommended.
I so move.
Can I get a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. And thank you for catching that, Alex. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
John Krischer,
Yes.
Susan Murphy,
Yes.
Phil Pardue,
Yes.
Sarah Twomey.
Yes.
They are approved. And sorry about that, Alex.
No problem. That's why we do it. Okay. Librarians report for June 2022. Ashley.
So librarians report for June 2022, goodness. There's nothing hugely big of note. We saw an increase, of course, in circulation for kids materials because it's summer reading time and people are off. We did see a dip in adult circulation. But my suspicion there is that we have more people traveling. Anecdotally across the desk, people are out of town and moving around more. And I expect this to stabilize as we go into late August, September, when people's travel schedules start to settle down. We're maintaining pretty closely our electronic checkouts. Our door counts are still up. We had great attendance at all of our summer reading programs that straddle both June and July. And I'm pleased the direction that we're heading in terms of people reacclimating and reworking, being physically at the library into their schedules. So we'll probably look at starting up story times at the beginning of September. And we're going that our new children's librarian and I have been going back and forth on inside or inside and outside. What is the best way for us to do this? So we will continue to work on that and add in additional programs. And I'm pleased with the direction that we're headed in terms of getting people back in the buildings again and where our statistics are right now. Are there any questions?
Shall we take it in reverse order? Phil, do you have any questions for Ashley?
So for the non-resident circulation total, it shows down 94% for the year change.
The year to date. That looks like an error to me, and I apologize. I did the librarian's report this month myself and was trying to fix formulas and catch things that fell off. So I believe that's an error. Let me look into that. This year to date number is definitely not 1,977.
Yeah, it's just a equation error there, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Phil.
That's all I have.
Susan, do you have any questions for Ashley?
No.
John?
I have a few. I have one comment. I was really happy to see the almost 280 kids participated in the after school programs at the park. And I do think one encouraging thing is the holds are up 200, which means people are really getting back in the library again when those numbers go up. People are holding books to draw out. So other than that, I think it's really looking great.
Great. I don't have any questions, so unless anybody has anything else. Thank you, Ashley. Looking good. Excited to have the library open even more days, and I'm sure our numbers will continue to increase. All right, last item on our agenda, update on the library's strategic plan. Ashley, this is yours.
It is mine. So as we spoke about this last month, doing a review of the strategic plan. In June, the library staff and I did a training, just a one day kind of training where we did our emergency procedures. We looked at the, there we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. So we took a look at the library structure because we have new staff here, and we are very fortunate in that we have the Friends of the Library to support us and the Carmel Public Library Foundation, as well as the Board of Trustees, and then of course our generous donors who are our library patrons. And so we just kind of did a review on the strategic plan itself, how we got there, reminding ourselves of the mission, which is that we are an efficient medium for the free and equitable distribution and exchange of books, information, and ideas, and a recognized social center providing the community with a place to learn, interact, and gather. And then our vision statement, which, there we go, is what we aspire to be. Sorry, I heard somebody look like they were going to say something. No? We aspire to be a welcoming place where reading, learning, and imagination thrive, a recognized leader and respected voice in our community, and a model library in our industry. So I think despite the pandemic, we have stuck to those things, with the exception of being able to, like, for a good piece of that, let people into our buildings, unfortunately. But working with outside library, curbside pickup, people were still in and around our buildings and facilities and wanting to be here. If you'll remember, I'll torture you for just a couple minutes about Harwood. We did some training with the Harwood Institute through some grant funding from the state, and we used the Harwood Institute to conduct community conversations. That's asking our community groups, community members, what their hopes are for the community, challenges they see for us, and potential solutions. The areas of focus for Harwood are being turned outward and asking these questions of our community, thinking about them when we build policies and make rules, understand where they're coming from, and then creating conditions for change so that when we make change, it sticks and it's not something that's a surprise or upsetting to people, that we're using how they want us to change, what they're looking for from us, that we're reflecting back what we're hearing from the community, figuring out the right path to take to get to that change, and making sure that we continue as part of our practice, doing our jobs at the library, that we're balancing our professional knowledge, which is also important, with making sure that we are listening to the community when we make decisions about the library. Again, we've got expert knowledge, that's us. We go to conferences, we read professional journals, we go work with our colleagues locally. And then there's also the public knowledge, and that comes from just doing surveys and asking people questions across the desk and taking into account what we're hearing. Are there trends and things where people are not happy with a certain way we've rearranged something in the library on a simple level, or, you know, something more of concern throughout the community that we could maybe help with, do something about. And of course, one of those tools is community conversations. And this is something that we engaged in prior to building our strategic plan. They're different than regular town hall types of meetings where it's, you know, tell us what you want for the library, or tell us why you are upset about beach fires. We're coming into this with a complete blank slate, and it's not, we've already predetermined something for you, but what's going on that we may not be aware of. For instance, and I'll use ZipBooks are a great example of this. That's why ZipBooks has been terrific. It's this little pocket of the collection where we can crowdsource it. One of the librarians was just telling me the other day that we filled a ZipBook request for something that wasn't on our radar, and as soon as it got checked back in, it had 6 holds on it. So something is afoot, and we might not quite understand it, but we're listening and we're ordering and doing those types of things, not going, oh, well, we would never order this, so get out of here, patron. We want to know about those things. We want to know about that interesting community underground, and that's why community conversations are so useful. They make you listen in a different way and think about things. This is just a slide about how we actually conduct the conversations, and what we did to gather the information that we came up with to help inform our strategic plan. It's a neutral space. That's one of the reasons why libraries were targeted for this training. And I think we got pretty good results, and came up with 3 new goals for the library strategic plan. 1, to increase community awareness and engagement. 2, to innovate to support equitable and inclusive access. And 3, to increase our operational excellence. We did go through the strategic plan goal by goal, objective by objective, when the staff and I sat and reviewed it. I included a copy of this, of course, in your packet. I don't know if the comment stuff, you can see some line outs, but we'll go through. I'm gonna switch over to a different screen so we can actually look at the commented version. Can everyone see the strategic plan? And I'll zoom in on it. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. So we kind of went through and made some notes about where we were with certain initiatives. I will say overall, when we reviewed, despite the pause from the pandemic, we have been able, especially the last 9 months, 6 months, as we've gotten open hours open, been able to kind of reprioritize how we're going to be factoring programs back in again. And with the help of the Carmel Public Library Foundation, get some of those larger initiatives like branding and marketing and communications moving forward. Looking at goal 1, increasing community awareness and engagement. We were able to do some levels of passive programming during the pandemic, specifically around crafts for the kids, making sure we had, bags to hand out, or when we were back outside, craft carts, and including those types of things with curbside and outdoor library. Now that we're back in the buildings and open again, we do have our puzzle table out. We've been working with the Carmel Youth Center on having crafts for their class visits that they've been doing during summer camps, and then just having things out in general for people to do and getting back in the swing of that. We're looking at doing a project over at the, in addition to the puzzle table, a kind of passive program that people can engage in for adults over at the Harrison Library. It's one of those things, and I think we'll be leaning into that more heavily too for teens, where people can come and be in our space, participate if they want, but they're not bound to do that. It's not contingent on them being in the library. They can just be and exist in our space without having to. And I think in particular for teens who have so much going on and so many extracurriculars, that is very important. Another note here is that we had participating in the Farmers Market Monthly, and when we put this objective in here, we had originally been discussing having staff out there, signing people up for library cards, members of the board of trustees out there, representatives alongside of us. That, of course, did not happen. However, what did happen is that the Friends are out there now, and they have been our ambassadors, and they've been sharing the Carmel Public Library Foundation program flyers and letting the community know about changes to library hours and things like that. And that has been absolutely wonderful. And it's been great for them for fundraising. So not originally what we intended when we set out that objective, but I think it's great. And I think there's still opportunity for these 3 groups to work on being at the farmers market together and getting back to some of that original goal. I still think it would be great if we can work it out with the schedule to sign people up for library cards and welcome them to the community if they don't have one. As far as I think I mentioned the rebranding the library, that is underway with I'm working with Alex on identifying a potential vendor who can provide those services to us. So we haven't moved too far forward on that, but when we have things for the board of various boards to take a look at and discuss, will be front and center with all of you. So I'm glad that is something that's in motion. We did pretty well, I'd say, during the pandemic of increasing our usage of Instagram in particular, Facebook posts, and using the library's website. Pre-pandemic, our engagement levels were abysmal, to the point where we had we're really trying to rethink whether or not that was the best use of staff time because it had been so many years of that. And the pandemic kind of forced everybody to swing that way. I will tell you that constant contact, I think, remains our best way to engage with library patrons. Our click rate is bonkers. It ranges from 35 to over 60%, depending on the topic of the newsletter some days. And I think industry standard, if you're doing really well, is, you know, close to 30. I think most of them have like the 15% range is good job. So we are exceeding that. Now that we have more staff, I think it's mostly, I will tell you, most of our community engagement has been handled by Katie O'Connell, who's of course our local history librarian, but has handled it with aplomb. Now that we have more staff members, this can be shared more broadly. And I'm hoping that out of our marketing and branding project, we'll have some templates that will make some of these things a little quicker and easier, that show it's coming from the Youth Services Department, local history, but all the same organization. I think I mentioned we're all Canva rock stars now, but it doesn't necessarily look like we're all in the same place. So some of that will get cleaned up, and we will continue to invest in how we are doing our communications with the community. A welcome packet for new community members has been something that's been discussed by various groups for a number of years, working with the realtors. And I know that's been on the Carmel Public Library Foundation's radar. So I think that this should definitely stay. And just like RFID, which I had gone back and looked at some of our older strategic plans for whatever reason I was looking for a specific project. RFID has been on our strategic plan since 2007. So hopefully some of these, that welcome packet doesn't take quite that long, but there's hope that we as a community will get it together for a welcome packet some way, somehow. One thing I want to put out, make note of, is that objective right there in the middle: invest in thoughtful and purposeful community partnerships. This was something that we had been working on as we were building the strategic plan, with going to groups and saying, hey, would you participate in these community conversations with us? And through doing some of that, when the pandemic hit, we had established some relationships that are reestablished in some cases, old relationships that served us very well at the beginning of the pandemic. For instance, we had been working very closely with the librarian at Carmel Unified, or at the Carmel High School. And so we started a book concierge service for teens, and we're doing virtual book club. And we were able to work with them to provide access to our iteration of Overdrive to high school students without them having to get a Carmel library card. They can use their student IDs. So another one was we had been working with the restaurant community, the Carmel area businesses and residents, it says CARB, residents, yes, those CARB. Worked with them on one of our community conversations and got to know some of the restaurateurs, and were able to connect them to the Unified School District to help provide hot lunches. So we didn't serve the lunches or do the things, but make those connections. And I think that's really important. And I think it has, for as long as I've worked here, I think that's improved for us. The youth center, again, is here on the regular. I'm looking forward to reaching out to the Carmel Foundation as we get going with some programs. And I think with that, we can only grow from there. Any questions so far on this first goal? All right, then I shall move along.
Well, so actually, just so let me ask, so like what? So we're reviewing this. We'll have more conversation. So this is 2022 through 2022. Is there a new strategic? There's a new strategic plan coming.
Well, I think that was the question. That was what the staff and I started to discuss, and that's why there's these comments here. And because I looked at this, you know, I usually have all the strategic plans up anytime we get close to budgeting. So I'll pull this up. January of every year and look at it. And when the pandemic first hit, I thought, wow, we really leaned heavily on our physical spaces in here, and this plan is completely obsolete, and the world is coming to an end. We have to do a new strategic plan. But I would argue for doing a blended plan where, and we kind of just did this with our community activity strategic plan, where I think there's merit in carrying over at least 2/3 of what we got here. I wouldn't recommend throwing it out completely and starting from scratch. I would do an amended strategic plan and extend this out at least a year, if not two, and incorporate in some goals that reflect what we learned during the pandemic, and then adopt a new strategic plan probably in January again, like we did the last time around.
Okay,
so this is the start of that conversation.
Got it. Okay, good.
So those highlighted ones are definitely ones I think that we should carry over, that hopefully we will be completing and are engaged in at this point. So on to goal number 2, innovate and support equitable and inclusive access. We got our bulletin board up in the fall of 2020 for the Park Branch Library. So that's open. Anybody can post anything that they want out there, and they do. And it's great. It finally caught on as a spot for posting. We are now moving forward on our master plan project. And I hope that we will be likely entering into a contract with an architect this fall to start moving us forward in that process of building that plan. So that's terrific. I'll go back to cohesive strategy around digital resources. This is one that definitely should be carried over, and it is not something that we, besides increasing people's access to those resources, the digital resources during the pandemic, beyond that, we haven't been able to do that higher level thinking. I am looking forward to doing that when we hire a new head of reference. And it will be something that our individual, I think, department heads, so kids, tech, local history's got its own special kind of digital resources. We'll all be working on together how we handle these, making sure that IT's looped in so that we are heeding that locks principle where we need to, which is lots of copies, keep stuff safe, especially in the digital world. So that one is definitely going to be something that we're going to want to keep on our plan and to tackle. The Devendorf Park expansion project, I think summer reading and the farmers market showed us how that project could really benefit, I think, the community, and it's definitely something that is on the council's radar. I hope it's something that moves forward sooner rather than later. And I think it should stay on our strategic plan as something for awareness and potential to make improvements for the library. And we'll be mentioning it as a potential as we work through master plan as well, for how that could look for any improvements or changes made to the Park Branch in particular. And then we have been doing some signage improvements in both buildings. It's not perfect yet. There are some spots that are just awkward to do signs, so we're trying to figure out what good options would be for that. Plus, we also need to balance that out with knowing that with master planning may come some changes to building layout, so we don't want to heavily invest in signs that we're going to have to rip down or won't work for the new building. So things that are movable, and knowing that some things, like if you go into the new book section, right there at the entrance of the Harrison Library, those signs aren't great, but they'll do, and they tell you new fiction's there. And at some point with master planning, we'll get something lovely and new or painted on the wall. So we're trying to balance those things out as we go through this strategic plan and keep that signage in mind. This improving days and hours of service, of course, meant something completely different before the pandemic, but Thursday and Saturday, 4 hours now, but I also am looking at hours in local history on the weekends as we do this expansion. So when I talk about Saturday hours, local history should be mentally included in that because I think that was important before the pandemic, and I think it's important now for access. So that will remain. And then goal 3, increasing operational excellence. I think we are working really well on this with the Carmel Public Library Foundation on identifying projects that we can move forward. We completed the Gathering Place project, and not only that, the reconfiguration of desks at that main level of the library with the nice new expanded book area. I included the refreshed main library reading room on here, and I think that can and will be incorporated into our master planning process. We are looking at, there are some funds that the foundation has set aside that were a donation from Rotary for new furniture in the children's area, so we can really open up that space in there for story times. And I already have our children's librarian thinking about what that looks like. She's got all the paint samples and everything that I had originally for furniture and looking at those and brainstorming what the potential is in there. So that's in progress. Financial policies and procedures, I'll be bringing those forward to the board next month. We discussed that in June. So here we are with strategic plan. We'll look at our financial policies to touch on what can we do, what do we used to do in the past in terms of reserves and investments on LAIF, why are we doing things the way we're doing them now, and what are our options for changing in the future. So we'll take a look at all of those things with those LAIF accounts in particular in mind, and reserves. Working with the local libraries, our MOBAC libraries, to investigate resource sharing, so that's sharing books and materials between the libraries. I have not lost hope that I will finish drafting some things for that working group. Even better, now that we've made it through the pandemic, when we started these discussions initially, Monterey County Free Libraries was on a different integrated library system. They were not using COHA, they were using Polaris. They've since done a request for proposals, and they are now a COHA library as well. So this is great. It would really increase the access that we have to materials from all over the county. So we'll continue investigating what that resource sharing could look like, costs and bang for our buck, that type of thing, and bring something forward to the board for discussion when we get there. The last bullets, we've got develop a staff training plan. I don't have a formalized plan sketched out quite yet, but as we rebuild this schedule and are looking at our building in storytime programs and outreach and new initiatives that we want to try, also remaining cognizant that we have time on our schedule where people can carve it out to go to conferences or training. Katie will be getting back into the swing of things this summer and attending Society of American Archivists Conference, which is great because then she can really come back with all those ideas after talking to her peers and really get back into the swing of local history projects and things. And then thanks to the Carmel Public Library Foundation, we'll be moving forward on RFID. Those are the radio frequency identification tabs that will be a part of our books now. We're the last library on the peninsula that doesn't have books that are read by RFID, so you can check out 10 of them at a time at the self-check machine and not have to worry about it. So that and self-check machines will be coming this fall. That request for proposals has already been issued. We have 2 responders thus far, and we'll do the timing of that closes the 26th of August. So we should have a contract in place probably by October and be ready to and have a sense of the scope of work. And I know we've had some groups, I've been speaking with John about this, who are interested in either volunteering or getting a group of people to help us with this project, because we have over 60,000 items that will need to be tagged at some point. So looking forward to that. The staff is looking forward to that as well, and having self-check machines and equipment. And then volunteer job descriptions. I think that is important for the library so that people know what they're volunteering for exactly. And we can also make sure that especially for some of the projects that are done in local history that really do require thoughtful attention to detail that is important. And I think that is it for our strategic plan. Thoughts, comments?
So Ashley, kind of how do you imagine this process kind of running forward, going forward in terms of, so, you know, we kind of reviewed the existing strategic plan. Would you like us to come back with ideas, thoughts? Do you want to just kind of, how are you imagining this running forward?
So yes, thoughts and ideas going forward. I think we should have it as maybe not quite a standing item, but at least a report out. So if you come to me with your thoughts, I'm doing the same thing with the staff, which is what should we be adding in? What is definitely done? What are our carryovers? I think that's the best place to start. I think the other thing to do probably this fall, I would like to, since it's been a number of years now, but I would like to conduct another round of community conversations just to take the temperature of where we are after such a disruptive and traumatizing 2.5 years, to see if what we were hearing then about connection, and it may be, building those community connections is really high priority. So I think that would be a good exercise to undertake.
All right, so let me start with the board. Do people have specific questions for Ashley? I have a couple more thoughts on how we might do this process going forward, but let me just stop and see if there are specific questions with respect to what Ashley has already presented to us.
So, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
The only thing I have to say is I've talked to some of the city employees in the building maintenance, and the ADA access to the main library is going to be challenging. It can be done, but that's a very challenging thing right now for them to work on that.
Yeah, and I think, that we've got the ADA master plan that the city's chipping away at slowly, and it's something that will be part of our awareness with the master plan for if we can make ADA improvements or need to, are required to, we will be doing that as part of any of the master plan projects. You see that in the just simple little things sometimes, like the railing leading up to the gathering place, that's an ADA handle that replaced one of the ones that's one like leading up to fiction that isn't that ADA, doesn't meet that ADA requirements. Anytime we're taking anything out, we need to replace it with something better than that. So that's definitely on the radar, John.
Okay, thank you.
Phil?
Yeah, so appreciate what you've been able to do over the last 3 years. I know it wasn't easy with the navigating the pandemic and still getting some of the items taken care of on the strategic plan, and then modifying, as you learn things over the last 3 years, modifying the plan going forward. And so I kind of like the, as we transition to whatever the next master plan is going to be and how we get there, at least having that blended one now. I do think the one specific thing I have is, you talked about, you have several different projects in the master plan. And for example, we're looking at branding and signage on one. And then we have the master plan of what are we going to do with the city on the redesign, the ADA and things like that. And maybe holding off on some of the signage. I think before a decision's made on that, going through and just seeing what the time lag is, because it could be, how many years do we think it's going to be from the time we start this review to when they actually start doing any changes to the library? And if it's measured in years, maybe you want to go ahead and change the signage, just understanding that you're going to have to change it in 3 to 5 years. And that would be my only comment. I'd be reluctant to hold off on really improving the library on something that's low cost, just because we're waiting for something that may or may not happen on a timeline that is reasonable. Over.
Yes, I think that would be great to, we have dates attached to most of the objectives, but I think that would be excellent to update those to try to figure out, one, work balance and make sure that all the projects aren't happening at once. But yes, what is that timeline for project completion and when we start those things? Thanks, Phil.
In the just one other thing, are we still planning to continue the library board president and the board of trustees president meeting once a month so they can kind of coordinate going through?
Yes, we are planning to continue those. We've been in summer hiatus, but those will pick up again.
All right. And does Tara know about this, or is this?
Yeah, I know about it.
Yes.
I know
Okay.
about it.
There you go. No, I just wanted to make sure that that was ongoing because, you know, as we have these different things, I just found it better to keep all the planets aligned. But anyway, that's all I have. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Phil. Susan, do you have any?
No, I've got one thing about farmer's market, and I'll just talk to Ashley about that after.
Okay. Hey, Alex, I'll just ask you too if you have any kind of thoughts on this, since I know that the foundation obviously plays a big role in a lot of these projects.
Yeah, thank you. I actually was thinking that, and I have been meeting, you know, with various stakeholders, board directors and different communications firms, and thinking about obviously our master plan and so many projects that we do have going on and that we want to move forward. So a lot of it is the timing of things. So for example, with the master plan, coming up with a piece of the communications plan that moves along with that, as well as looking forward and starting to identify those community members and stakeholders who might support the update of this starts now, and it's a dance. I mean, it's full of nuance, and it, in my opinion, has to be addressed at all, you know, strategically, but on all points. We can't just kind of move forward in little, you know, silos of projects without contemplating all these things. So I think that's, you know, to be worked out, and that is what I've been thinking about a lot, and what I want to continue to work with Ashley on, because they can't be done, you know, isolated, or, you know, you think about the horse and the carriage, but it all kind of has to move together to go forward. So that's where I'm at right now with the foundation, and worth working with Ashley too.
Great. Right. I think obviously, and I think to Phil's point too, kind of, you know, having that view of the forest is important, as opposed to just looking at every tree, and so hopefully we'll continue to do that. So Ashley, in terms of going forward, I agree that this should kind of be on our agendas going forward as we kind of look to future agenda items. I guess my question for you is there something that the board should be tasked with before the next meeting? So for example, it seems to me like ongoing thoughts, and at some point the dates are going to have to be all adjusted on this. That's something that's more in your park than in ours. But in terms of ideas, you know, should we, and I realize that the ideas can be ongoing. They don't have to be next meeting, but you know, is it helpful to have ideas from the board sooner rather than later? I think those have to be communicated at this meeting. In general, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, that just because of our, what we need to do publicly, I think if people have ideas that you should bring them to this meeting, share them with Ashley, we can talk about them, and then we can figure out whether, Ashley, you know, kind of leave it to you, whether kind of how they get reincorporated or incorporated into this plan.
Yeah, I think that, yes, if you could all think about this, ponder this document, send me emails, and then we can go, I can compile everything, or we can just go over it in real time at the next meeting, but that would be very helpful to hear the board's thoughts and perspectives. I know that you all read articles and books and things like that about libraries and have thoughts about what they're doing that we could maybe be doing, or just anything that is a potential for us would be helpful. And then I'd also like to bring a strategy for collecting information from the public going forward to talk about at our next meeting, and whether that happens at the farmers market and how involved the trustees are involved, because I know there were a couple of you last round who were eager to learn how to do the Harwood Institute community conversations. And I have not forgotten about that. And I think that that's important training. And I think the board would be great ambassadors for that. So That would be
And then will we, okay, so we'll bring this back. At what point do we push some of these dates forward? Obviously, you know, June 2020 has long passed.
I feel confident about having updated dates at the next meeting. I think
Okay.
I've got a pretty good handle on where Alex and I are in terms of timeline for some of our projects, where I am and the staff are in terms of adding some things back in. So I can take a pass at that for the next meeting and bring that back to all of you.
Perfect. So then, so then just to kind of wrap up this agenda item, it sounds to me like, you know, we've kind of done this preliminary re-review of the strategic plan that we haven't looked at for a little while. We will, you know, as board members, you know, if you have ideas or thoughts, we can pass those along to Ashley. You can bring them to the next meeting. And then we'll start the process of moving this actual plan forward to something that when we look to January, we'll have something that we can maybe vote on again as the kind of go forward strategic plan. It'll take a couple months to make that happen. Does that sound right?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Or a good way to proceed. All right. Does anybody have any other comments or questions in terms of process and how we're going to kind of move this strategic plan forward? I guess for me, Ashley, I guess I would also say it would be helpful maybe to have just a moment where we talk about all the different plans, because we have a master plan, which is different from the strategic plan. And we're going to have a lot of plans. And I know for me, it would be helpful to have a 2-minute review of what each plan is going to be doing, right? What the goal is and how they relate to each other.
Yes, I can do that. A synthesis of all the plans, and I'll throw in some of the city plans too that affect us and some of these processes as well. And yes.
That would be great. Just because I know from my perspective, sometimes I'm like, wow, we have a lot of different plans going. How do they all interact with each other? So it would be helpful just to have and it doesn't have to be long, but just a brief overview of how those all work. All right, great. Does anybody have, well, let me just see. Does anybody have any further questions on terms of the strategic plan, either process or how we're going to move forward with that?
I agree with you. You said that I'd like to know the plans, an explanation of all of them. On the ADA thing, I've talked to city employees about that to try to catch up myself on that. So if she could explain more to it, then I could get more of a hold on what's really important.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. If there are no other questions on the library strategic plan, I would just ask whether people have any other future agenda items. We'll kind of carry this strategic plan over probably for the next couple months, each month. But are there any other items that people would like to see on the agenda? All right. Nothing else?
Nope. So next month we'll have the strategic plan that will come back, and then we'll do a review of the financial policies. Those are big items. And we'll have the financials and check register for June and July. We're still closing out. Well, we're closed out of June now, but at the time Lupe had them, we weren't closed out of June quite yet.
Great. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for everybody for being here this morning, and we'll see you in a month, if not sooner.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye now.